What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today we're going to be talking about defending your position, which obviously, of course, relates to passing people, because if you know what people are going to be doing, then you know how you can counter that tactic yourself and get by the other guy. But maybe we'll talk about passing a little bit more later on, but uh, position defense is something that people get a lot of times confused, or they do things in unorthodox or unsafe manners, aka you see a lot of people just like weaving, playing like, is Gran Turismo or Forza. Hey, I'll admit I do it. I don't like losing in those games, so what I do, I hit that look behind button and I just like drive right in front of the guys behind me. That's what you do there. That's not what you do in sim racing. You can't just drive in your mirrors. You got to focus forward, pay attention to what's going on ahead of you. Pick a line, run that line. Whatever happens is going to happen. If you pick the right line, the guy will stay behind you. Simple as that. You will be successful in defending your position. Now, the thing with Mosport is it is a track that is somewhat difficult to pass on, but at the same time, every single corner is a passing opportunity. There's literally not a corner on this track map that you will see that you cannot pass at. Turn 2, yeah, it's hairy. Turn 4, it's crazy. But at the same time, if you have confidence in the other driver, which over the course of a 25-minute race, I think we both built up enough confidence in the other one to trust each other enough, it is a legitimate passing opportunity. You have to make sure that you're not giving that passing opportunity, or you're taking the right steps to prevent that passing opportunity from happening when you're defending your position. Done correctly, it's actually quite easy. You really don't need to worry about anything. It's always the overtaking car's responsibility to complete the pass safely. So focus forward. Don't worry about what's going on, because if you do, then you'll probably end up making a lot of mistakes. And you'll probably end up just giving the position over anyways. But if you just focus on doing what you know how to do and doing what you know you need to do, you really probably won't have all that much of a trouble. So anyways, let's go ahead and start looking at some examples. Let's talk a little bit about an example down here in Turn 1 at Mosport. Like I mentioned earlier, a bunch of different lines through here, a lot of different ways to get through the corner with various degrees of success. But you have to be aware of that, because otherwise you can get into a situation where you're driving into a gap that does not actually exist, or you can get into a situation where it looks like there might be a gap, but there really isn't a gap. You're going to see what could have become a spectacular dive bomb on behalf of this driver. However, he realized what was actually happening and what's going to naturally happen, because we're both trying to get through the same corner. The way I'm trying to approach the corner might be different, but at the same time, I'm still going through the exact same corner that he is. So we both have to obey the same laws of physics, right? But you'll see what happens here. Just look at the gap between cars through this corner. Especially right here. Here is the interesting part. It looks like there is a ton of space. It looks like I have entirely missed the corner. That was my line. Whether it's faster or slower is probably up to discussion, but because the driver behind me is taking a more direct line to the apex, to the corner, he's going to end up gaining ground, especially going into the corner with a little bit more speed, carrying a little bit more speed into that corner. He's going to gain even more ground. But at the same time, he's nowhere near passing position, so he's not going to be able to actually make a pass. The only way he'd be able to make a pass is if he flat out runs me over, in which case it's his fault. If someone's going to wreck you, they're going to wreck you, so I don't need to worry about that. Going into this corner, I was not concerned about, is this guy going to pass me, because A, he's not in passing position, as well as B, if he does try and pass me, he's going to run me over, wreck me, and it's going to be all his fault, and everybody's going to know it. Hey, I can take comfort in that. Let's talk a little bit about defensive lines, as well as making other drivers drive the line that you want them to take, usually because that will result in them staying behind you. Now, we should all know by now that there's only one supremely fast way through the corner. You want to use as much track on entry, as much track on exit. You want to get right on to the apex, perfect. However, in a racing situation, that's not going to happen. That's why racing other cars is also significantly slower, and why you'll lose a lot of time if you're not quick and smart about things. But By this stage in the race, I've noticed that the car that we're right behind has been much faster through the sweeping right-hand corner at the end of the straightaway, to the point where I have a feeling that he's going to attempt a pass. He's been behind me for a while. He's probably getting a little aggressive. Just kind of one of those things that you just kind of got to figure your thought process through. Just comes with a little bit of experience and thinking through, put yourself in those shoes. So I'm going to go ahead and take a defensive line for the left-hand corner that follows this right-hander. This is going to make sure that the car that we're directly behind stays to the right side of the track, which means that he stays in a position where he has no chance of making that pass in the left-hander. He's not going to be able to complete the pass in this right-hander, and I know that from track experience and just knowing the track layout. So by putting myself at an advantage in the following left-hander, I ensure that I maintain my position. Simple as that. Now let's see what happens. Simple as that. At this point, he's effectively boxed out for the next corner. There's no way he's going to be able to complete the pass. This has failed. I may have lost a little bit of time. I might have been faster taking the optimal line. However, then you also get to the point where could he maybe attempt that late move up the inside going to the left-hander? Could he maybe pull up some ground going around the outside because, again, he was faster through this corner. But by taking a defensive posture early in advance, I don't need to weave, I don't need to block, I don't need to do anything screwy. I essentially make it so that way he can't pass me at all. It's basically physically impossible for him to pass me in the same car that I'm driving going into the next corner from this position. Simple as that. Just car positioning 101. That simple. It will work every time. Every time. Simple as that. Now let's take a look at a little bit more of extreme example here of just picking your line, sticking to your line, and whatever happens, happens. We have some slower class traffic that we have to navigate. We got 3 cars in class battling for position with the Cadillacs. These 2 Kias were racing for position, I believe. But basically, we're coming up into an area where there's going to be a lot of traffic. We're going to have 5 cars going into the same corner at the same time. I don't want to lose my position. You never want to lose your position. You also don't want to get hit by another slower car or alternatively run over the class leader in embarrassing fashion. But you don't want to lose time. So it's something where you have to tiptoe and you have to plan that out and be ready for that. You'll see the driver here that we're following is going to attempt to make up ground, which he very well could do in a situation like this where there's a lot of traffic, very good opportunity. But because I just stick to my line and don't worry about what he's going to do because he's going to hit me if he's going to hit me, and I can't do anything about that. It is up to him to not hit me. Simple as that. I end up defending the position and actually gaining up a bunch of ground versus this driver. So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. Now you'll notice maybe he could have potentially forced it 3 wide coming on the straightaway, but he has nowhere to go because I stuck to my line. I was on the outside. You can follow the gray racing groove throughout the corner here, but basically there's nowhere for him to go. He doesn't have any room on corner exit just because the way the corner naturally happens. Very close there on corner exit, but I don't need to worry about that. I honestly didn't even notice that he was that close in the rearview mirror. If I did, I probably would have spazzed out and been like, oh my god, this guy is all over my bumper. This is scary, man. You don't need to worry about that. Focus forward. In case you're wondering what a block looks like, you're about to see one. This is a miscommunication that's caused between myself and the blue car as well as the Kia, the red and black car up ahead, which basically creates a very awkward moment for just about everyone. In a mixed class situation, this type of block is really more of a miscommunication. You kind of have to treat it as such. And really, because Mosport is a fairly narrow track, as well as the fact that this would leave the driver that we're following basically nowhere to make a pass in the next corner, as he'd be way up the inside to the point where he had to basically have to stop to make the corner. It's just an awkward situation, but you'll see what I mean. I was simply put expecting to go around up the inside on corner exit past the Kia, and then he went that way, and I was already going that way, so I had to go back across. And there was space there, but there's not space there because Mosport's kind of narrow like that. It's really narrow, so it's just one of those awkward multi-class situations that just kind of comes with the territory. Although that's what a block looks like, just so you know. Here's another traffic situation. You'll notice there's another Kia coming up ahead. We're probably going to end up catching it somewhere around the hairpin as we go through the diving and left-hand turn here. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I don't get boxed in by that car. I want to make sure that, worst comes worst, the car behind me that I'm racing for position with is going to have to take the longest possible route going into the hairpin. That means it's going to be the slowest possible route. So you'll see what ends up happening here is I go deliberately wide through this downhill left, leaving space for the driver behind, because that forces him onto the line that I want him to take, which is ultimately the slower one. That's going to keep him behind me. That's what we want. As well as the fact that it makes sure that I have an out from the car in front and I don't get boxed in. If I get boxed in, he's going to get boxed in. Simple as that. Simple. Let's talk about backing up the corner. We're going into the hairpin here at the bottom of the hill. This is a double apex corner that leads onto the longest straightaway on the course. It's very tricky, very difficult corner, as well as the fact that because it leads on the longest straightaway, it's very important and sets up one of the best passing opportunities on the course. In my position, it is absolutely crucial that every single lap I get a good run out of there. I get a gap on the driver behind me. He's naturally going to end up having the slipstream. He's going to end up going faster down the straightaway. There's nothing I can do about that. So I need to try and open up a gap. Now, he's really fast in the first part of this corner, but what I can do in the second part of the corner, the important part of the corner, is actually slow down the corner and make sure I hit that every single time. I was actually going significantly slower than what I am capable of going through this corner at, but because I am being more cautious through it, I'm going to hit that corner every single time, and as well as because I'm delaying throttle application just a little bit, I'm going to be going when I'm going. And the driver behind me, he's not going to have anything he can do about it because the only option he has at that point is to run me over. It's not a lot. It's not a huge difference. It's not parking in front of the guy and not going. It's just simply put, not going as fast. You'll see what I mean. Pay attention to the straightaway speed difference and the gap that opens up. That's a pretty big, sizable gap, all because the driver behind me was not able to put the power down as quickly as he would have liked because, well, simply put, there's a car in his way, and he can't run over cars. Pretty simple. Not a huge thing. Don't park in front of the guy, but at the same time, carefully tiptoe that line. Unconventional. You might not think about slowing down to open up a gap, but really, it can be very useful, especially in slow speed corners. Coming down the straightaway here, we have some traffic, and I'm going to be using this to my advantage. I didn't get a very good launch off of the hairpin. I think the guy behind me was kind of wising up to what was going on, and he started to plan for it. So he has a very good chance. This is the best opportunity that he's had all race. But you'll notice what's going to end up happening here. I'm going to use the slower car as basically a blocker for me. Even though we'll only be too wide down the straightaway, I've positioned myself to the point where I can use up the most amount of space I possibly can, but at the same time, that space is still smaller than the size of his car. He can't fit. So simply put, we're going down the straightaway 4 wide even though we're only 2 wide because we're using up as much space as we possibly can. And that is one of those things that you really have to pay attention to because really right here was the best passing opportunity that he had the entire race. And you'll also see down once we get in the sweeper, same thing that we did earlier, forcing him into an aggressive line which actually turns out to be a line that he has no chance of ever completing the pass with. Now you might say at the end there that was kind of a choppy move, and I'm not too terribly sure because there is space and there is a gap there that he could have taken. And I certainly know he's a talented enough driver to fit into that gap. I think this is just a case of driving into the corner too fast to make the corner at that line that is given to him. It's just one of those simple things. There was no damage or anything like that. There was no hostilities after the race or any shenanigans like that. Just kind of one of those things where trying too hard and getting there a little bit too deep trying to make that pass, because really, like I said, this was the best opportunity that he had the whole race. Time for a history lesson. Nigel Mansell, he was well known for his ability to pass other cars and his tactics in the race. He was a very smart driver. One of his favorite moves and one of the most common moves and famous moves that you see from him was basically the dummy pass. And what that was doing was essentially weaving all over the place behind the car in front, getting the car in front to go for a block, and then laughing at them as they took that block and going up the inside into the corner. You'll see the same thing play out coming down this straightaway going into the right-hand sweeper at turn 8. If I go ahead and move back to the outside to cover the first move, the driver behind me is just going to simply go up the inside and laugh at me every single time. But because I just hold my line, I essentially make it so that way if he tries to go up the inside, his angle to the corner is so shallow, he's going to have no speed going through that corner. Don't fall for it. A lot of drivers fell for it, even in Formula 1. And it made them look very embarrassed. No driver is ever going to make a pass from that position. Ever. The physics just simply put do not work out. The car will never be able to carry enough speed into the corner to make that pass actually work. Very simple. Hold your line and they can't pass you. Don't fall for the dummy move. Do not fall for it. Time for a little bit of a scenario right here. Final corners, the last lap. As part of that, you have to absolutely 100% expect a desperation move. If the driver behind you doesn't try and pass you in the last corner by going basically all in, everything or nothing, they're not a very cool race car driver. I'm just going to say that. You have to expect that move to happen. If you watch the NASCAR trucks from here, the 2013 race, you saw this happen twice. First and second position and third and fourth. Both of those times, a truck ended up in the wall. And that was really entirely unnecessary. Why? Because you don't need to defend that hard. If you've ever watched a race from Mosport, you probably have seen this move happen a bajillion times. This corner, the right-hander leading on the straightaway, naturally sets itself up to you need some exit speed coming out of that corner, but you can make a giant dive bomb. If you expect that dive bomb, and you leave room for that dive bomb, you're going to be laughing at the driver who's doing the dive bombing every single time as you come away with that position. They're never going to be able to make that pass if you actually plan for them making that pass. Simple as that. He either goes into the corner with no speed, which means I have tons of speed compared to him and I drive by him going 90 miles an hour more, or alternatively, he slides by right in front of me and I go underneath him and laugh as, well, he goes flying on by and I'm like, my position still. So you'll see what happens here. There's no way he's going to make that pass. It's simple physics. The car cannot turn sharp enough from this angle to get by the corner with any sort of speed. The only way he's going to be able to possibly make the corner is by simply coming to a stop. And if you come to a stop on a racetrack, you're probably not going to pass people. I really think this frame explains everything. As you can see, I'm definitely off of the racing line. I'm not going to actually hit the apex of that corner, but I'm not trying to, because if I try to, he's going to run into the side of me, and I'm probably going to end up getting spun out. He's probably going to blow up or something. Who knows? But by taking a outside line deliberately and purposefully, I get back into the power when I need to get back in the power, when I can get back into the power, which means I can go through the corner as fast as I possibly can without having to worry about him running in the side of me because I'm trying to take the racing line, which is the technically correct line Although in this case, taking that correct line would have actually probably ended up with me getting turned around, spun out, crashed, wrecked, potentially, or alternatively, just causing a mess with the other driver. So it's just one of those things where sometimes you don't need to block as hard as you think you need to block. You don't need to really defend. You just need to be aware of where the other car is and just allow them to play the game that they can play, which is the game that you want them to play. Work smarter, not harder. So, yeah, that's that. Hopefully you guys don't swerve around the track trying to hold your positions. Bye.